We have a crazy story. You guys, this definitely needs more coverage. We have updates coming out of Gaza. And Nico and I really want to talk about this because with everything that's been happening with Israel and Iran, it seems like the attention has kind of been pivoted away from Gaza. And there is breaking news that is coming out of there. And here's the first one. Somehow, some way, opioid pills discovered in U.S.-backed food aid, Gaza authorities said. The U.S. Israeli aid distributor, the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, has been widely condemned for possible complicity in war crimes. This is a big, big story, ladies and gentlemen. So to make a long story short, here it says the Gaza government media office on Friday condemned the discovery of
I believe in being consistent about my policies.
So your father is not a citizen of the United States.
Hold on one second. Sorry, something auto played. Sorry about that, Nico. It's that it had Vivek had to autoplay for whatever reason. But this part right here, that's important. They discovered oxycodone pills in flour bags that were distributed by American Israeli aid centers. This is a huge story. They have said here they had 4 testimonies from citizens who found these pills inside the flour bags, possibly that some of these narcotic substances were deliberately ground or dissolved in the flour itself. Nico, I want to bring you in here.
So the aid was distributed by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, excuse me. And it's important that people understand that effectively, this is the only aid foundation that's being allowed to operate in Gaza. So it's not like they can point the finger at somebody else. They're talking about condemning the drugs that were sent in, but everyone knows how difficult it is for literally anyone else. It's impossible for aid from any other organization to get into Gaza. So this fake condemnation of the drugs being put into to Gaza through the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it's crazy. It's insane that they actually believe that people are stupid enough to think that they were not directly guilty. They weren't just complicit. This was intentional, and it could be for any number of reasons. Principally, I believe that it could be one of those situations like what we've seen done to a lot of indigenous communities, where you basically inject drugs, alcohol. They won't ingest them directly because many of them are Muslim. So you have to sneak it in, which forces them to be addicted, and that causes a whole host of other issues as well, as you well know. So it's scary because when you combine that, right, they're not getting much aid as it is. The aid that they're getting from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is trash. They say like there's like no drinkable liquid basically. There's not really any food. If there is food, it's usually bad. The former director of the organization, literally, his name is Jake Woods. He literally just gave up. He quit the organization in February 2025, 2 days before they made their first distribution, because of how horrible it was being ran and how Israel and the United States weren't allowing him to do his job. Now I can't speak to how genuine his intentions were, but like he knew that it was a PR nightmare. So it's scary when you look at the drugs, plus the fact that they're being kettled into these aid checkpoints just to be shot down. We posted a lot about that on Hotspot. And Israel and the United States are directly responsible for this.
So someone already said it, but I was going to bring this up. FM said like crack in the 1980s put in Black communities. That's exactly what I thought about when I heard about this story, because for those who are not aware, similar things have happened here in the United States where you have a community. Well, first and foremost in the US, first they took the jobs, right? So the factory jobs were gone. If you go back and you know about like the Great Migration, where Black people moved from the South to like the northern states to have those factory jobs. Well, then first they took the jobs away. So now you're at a point where you're obviously going to be desperate. They took the jobs away. Then they brought in, so people oftentimes don't get this right. Drugs were brought into Black communities. So obviously, like, you don't have a job, you're desperate, you have despair, and then next thing you know, they want to get you hooked on drugs. This is exactly what this reminds me of. So now it's like, if you look at everything that's happened in Gaza, which Gaza is a complete disaster, there's hardly nothing left there. So there are no jobs, not to mention, Nico, it's not like people in Gaza are working. They have no employment. The kids aren't going to school, haven't been for over a year. And then now they put in the final test, right? They bring drugs in. Let's get the people addicted to drugs so that they can either die from it or the community can completely fall apart. Mm-hmm. I don't see how the US government or Israel pretends not to know anything about this. They're directly responsible. I mean, the Gazans didn't put those drugs there themselves. They're not even allowed to leave.
Yeah, the Gazans didn't put the drugs there by themselves. The majority of the population of Gaza is Muslim, so they don't have drugs or alcohol readily available. And they probably, even if they had it for sale, and as a person, like, I just, I went to Egypt. It was actually very difficult to find any alcohol. Not saying that it wasn't on sale, but like, we could basically only drink at the hotel because it was an American hotel. So like, it is very difficult to find any type of drug or alcohol in a Muslim dominant society because of the religion. So, for this to have gotten into their communities, had to be intentional. And the goal was to force them to do something they otherwise wouldn't do, to force them to participate in taking a drug that they otherwise wouldn't take. And there are some Muslims who don't even believe in taking Western medicine. So even if it was available to them and they were taking it, oxycodone for the right reasons, quote unquote, they still wouldn't take it. They would prefer a different method, or they would just tough out the pain. So, once again, we have to just remember this in the context of no one else is allowed to deliver aid. These and the boxes were from this organization. And the organization, I mean, it isn't just Israeli, and American supported. It's based out of Delaware. That is where it is incorporated, right? And we haven't seen really any level of accountability, at least in my opinion, sufficient accountability regarding this, knowing that, because this problem never existed. And now it does, right? It never existed before. Israel's running Gaza. Israel's the only one who's controlling the flow of aid in and out. And now the problem exists. So once again, where is the not just condemnation through words? I'm talking about, where is the accountability? Where we need to start putting people in jail. I mean, because beyond the drugs, they're literally kettling people at these points and killing them. And I mean, beyond that, these points were created as well to get them to volunteer into enrolling through a biometric system so they can trace Hamas militants, but really is to get them all enrolled in this system, probably to prepare them for this transition, for this fake ass two-state solution that Trump and Netanyahu were talking about, where effectively Gaza still wouldn't be free. It would just be controlled by US and Israeli puppets.
Exactly. They're essentially like poisoning their food. The other thing too is that, to Nico's point, Israel controls what comes into Gaza, right? So Israel doesn't even allow chocolate to enter Gaza.
They control whether the water runs or not, right? Like, and it's not like, when it comes to this aid, it's not like we haven't been spending the last 2-3 months screaming at the top of our lungs because they were disallowing aid from flowing through. And then they made a huge spectacle whenever they finally created this fake organization, this fake humanitarian aid organization, to allow aid to flow through, finally. So it's like they set it up so that there would be no other option as to who the culprit is. Everyone knows it's you because y'all made a big deal about not letting the aid through. And then you let the aid through, and then drugs in situations where drugs will otherwise not be used. And so it's scary. Like, people have to understand, this is a colonial pattern. This isn't something we just saw in the Black community or the indigenous community in the US. Y'all know that, like, when there were drugs planted and ran through the indigenous community in places like Colombia, specifically for them not to destroy their indigenous community, but also to give a reason for the cops and the government to go in there and take their land and remove them from their land, put them in jail for them to basically allow the Spaniards and the wealthy to control those areas for various reasons, for agriculture reasons, because it was a convenient area, just to get the indigenous out. Like, this is a pattern that Israel is following. It's not, they didn't invent this move, but that's how we can probably guess what their intentions are, because we have the context of history here.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those examples that you can't point to. And by the way, this should be all over corporate media, but it's not. And that's why, like, Nico and I are talking about this, because this is a big story. Like, there should be a lot of outrage about this, that these drugs were brought in through the aid, through the food. And they know, and I saw a video, Nico, and you probably saw this one too. There was a kid, he was going to get flour, like, for his family. They were throwing the bags of flour on the ground. The kid was trying to get the flour off the ground, and it's mixed in with the dirt. And he was interviewed, and they said, "Why are you picking up the flour off the ground?" He's like, "This is all we have." He said, "We're going to sift through it to try to get, I guess, as much of the dirt out of it as you can, so that they can try to make bread or something with it." But like, if you see the videos on social media, they are treating these people like they are animals. The way that they are throwing the food at them, the people got to be low on the ground because they're afraid they're going to get shot, and then they shoot at them anyway.
Yep.
It's absolutely insane what they're doing to them. So I want people to know about this, because when they tell you that they're letting aid come in, corporate media is not showing you the videos that are coming out of Gaza that you see on social media of what they're doing to these people when they come to try to get the food. And now you find out that there's drugs mixed in with it. So we have a serious problem, and the US is directly responsible and Israel is directly responsible. But again, because our attention has been diverted to, Israel and Iran, a lot of people don't know about this.
Yeah, it's not even really, you can't blame really anybody for not being aware of what's going on, because that threat of World War III was genuine. And it's still, in my opinion, hasn't dissipated. That threat is still there and it's still very real. But I also don't want people to feel like these two issues are disconnected, because the central problem is still Israel. And, at a micro level, it's Netanyahu, right? And I believe that a lot of what's happening, a lot of what's taking place is part of that greater Israel project. You've talked about it. I've talked about it. Taking Palestine is part of that greater Israel project, but also all these wars, because Netanyahu, as soon as he got done with Iran, well, I don't know if you want to call it done, but they took a pause. And starts actually, before he even took the pause, started bombing Lebanon. Then he started bombing Syria again, because every move he makes is to extend these corruption hearings that he's supposed to be going through. And every time they start a new war, they keep moving the date back, and start a new conflict, they move the date back. And he also gets to move the elections back. So he keeps getting to avoid accountability, right? And if Israel, to be frank, is so busy trying to hold him accountable for the things he did inside Israel as prime minister, they haven't even had the time to hold him accountable, or even think about holding him accountable for the things that he's done regarding Gaza or the West Bank. And there are even some people who used to work in his government that left that have condemned his actions strongly, not necessarily because of how they feel about the Palestinians, but because they know that his actions have led directly to Israeli deaths unnecessarily, all because he's trying to cover his own ass.
That's right. This is a good point Tabitha brought up. Israel won't allow any medicine or pharmaceuticals into Gaza to help alleviate the pain of amputation, but they'll introduce highly addictive substances into the food aid. Exactly. So another way to kind of, I guess, numb the pain, but obviously they'll become very addictive. We know what opioids has done here in the US.
Did you hear about how they're trying to blame these Israeli drug dealers who are using drones to fly in drugs and cigarettes into Palestine, or to Gaza specifically? They're trying to deflect blame to some random Israelis. I'm like, if they flew a drone from Israel into Gaza, y'all would have shot that drone down. There's no way. Y'all be shooting everything that flies. Anything that flies, anything that drives, anything that's moving too fast, anything that's walking too slow. Y'all shoot dogs, cats, horses, anything. And y'all gonna try to convince us that it was two random Israeli drug dealers that are running some super secret operation. And please explain it. How are they communicating with their plugs in Palestine? With whom are they communicating? Because nobody got phones. They don't got no towers. They don't got nothing. The fact that we're even still able to see these videos is a miracle in and of itself.
Yeah,
a lot of times we're not even getting to see the full videos or the full stories because it's so hard to get information from inside of Gaza outside of it. So like, who would they be communicating with? If there is an Israeli drug dealer, they're probably communicating with an Israeli drug dealer who's in Gaza from the IDF. Either way, it's Israel's fault. But it's the government, I can assure you. Like, there's no y'all. We could, if there was somebody who could have figured out a way to use drones to circumvent this blockade that Israel has put, then somebody would have done it already to get aid into Gaza. But somehow they're going to try to convince us that a drug dealer is smuggling in cigarettes and other drugs, and they didn't know it until this oxycodone was found. It's ludicrous.
That's right. Don't forget, it was the CIA that also was busted bringing drugs into the Black community. So it's the government. And that leads us to this story, too, because something else that just came out of Gaza, it's a killing field. IDF soldiers ordered to shoot deliberately at unarmed Gazans waiting for humanitarian aid. This is another one, another story I think that's been kind of slept on. It says that IDF officers and soldiers told Haaretz they were ordered to fire at unarmed crowds near food distribution sites in Gaza, even when no threat was present. Hundreds of Palestinians have been killed, prompting the military prosecution to call for a review into possible war crimes. Netanyahu, Katz reject the claims. Of course, they call them a blood libel. So here we go again. They are trying to eliminate the people that are left. Nico, your take on this?
Yeah. They're trying to eliminate the people that are left. And by the way, this story, although Haaretz is reporting that the officers are now admitting this, I don't know if you recall, but this has been going on since February. And I know because I covered this story for Hotspot when it started, because I was like, what? This is a fake aid organization. It's not going to do what it's claiming its intentions are, especially considering that the director already left because he admitted that was going to happen. He knew all this was going to take place and he didn't want to be a part of it. And there have been mothers having to send their sons into these aid points because they have zero option. They have no other choice. And you have no idea whether or not your child is going to come back alive because they're shooting people at these aid points and for no reason whatsoever. And this has been happening for months and no one has done anything about it. It is despicable what's been allowed to take place. And people, like the audacity of Zionists to go on Twitter because of this concert in the UK and this guy saying, well, fuck the IDF and all that good stuff. Like, oh my God, I don't feel safe. I had to come to Twitter to let everybody know I'm a Zionist and now I don't feel safe. Like, bitch, nobody would know you a Zionist if you didn't say it. I don't understand why y'all, like, I hate when people like make that like false conflation of like being a Zionist and like being an Arab or being Palestinian or being Black. Like, if I say I'm a Black person in a particular space, I don't feel safe. It's because I don't get to choose if I am Black or not when I enter this space that I do not feel safe in. And I am aware that given the context and the history of that particular space, there's a chance that some shit could go south. No pun intended. But when you're a Zionist and you got blonde hair and blue eyes, no one's worried about you. No one is walking up to you and asking you, hey, ma'am, are you a Zionist? Literally nobody. I wouldn't have known you were Jewish or a Zionist if you didn't say anything. And it's disgusting and it is sickening to see them playing the victim because of some words. He said, fuck the IDF. Meanwhile, the IDF is literally shooting kids down, looking for food.
Yeah.
Like if you didn't know the IDF was hated until like yesterday at that concert, that's your fault. You ain't been paying attention because we've made it pretty clear how we feel about the IDF over the last couple of at least the last couple of years. At least. Sometimes longer than that. But whatever. It's
They've
crazy.
been trying to make it seem like words or speech is more dangerous than the actions. Like, how is that more dangerous than actual genocide? Like what they're doing to like the Palestinian people. And you'll see it here. It says conversations with officers and soldiers reveal that commanders ordered troops to shoot at crowds to drive them away or disperse them even though it was clear they posed no threat. One soldier described the situation as a total breakdown of the IDF ethical codes in Gaza. According to Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza, 549 people have been killed near aid centers and in areas where residents were waiting for UN food trucks since May 27th. Over 4,000 have been wounded, but the exact number of those killed or injured by the IDF fire remains unclear. So they were instructed to kill people who were seeking aid. So again, like I said, they never had any real intentions of letting them get the aid.
And this is coming from got to be new there, right? Talking about that doesn't fall within the moral code or the ethical codes of the IDF. He must be new. He got to be, because that's exactly what shooting at crowds full of Palestinians. That is literally all y'all do, especially if they're unarmed. The only thing that would make a difference is if those Palestinians were armed, then we know y'all are running the other direction because y'all are only accustomed to killing people who can't defend themselves. Like, that is your whole doctrine, people. Like, it's he must be new there.
But the thing is, this statement isn't coming from like a journalist in Gaza. This statement is coming directly from members of the IDF.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I mean, I'm sure you've heard about some of the IDF members. There's been high suicide rates amongst the IDF members getting out, transitioning out. They're struggling to call up their ready reserved people who are, a lot of them don't live in Israel, right? They're supposed to come back when they're called up if they want to maintain their citizenship. And whenever Israel's calling them, they're like, yeah, I ain't going to be able to make it, dog. You wildin'. They're wildin'. I don't want to be a part of that. They don't, and people, I mean, I don't know if it's shame. I don't know if it's fear. I don't know if it's a lack of morale. It could be that there are some Zionists, because I've heard stories and I've personally experienced people who, I know this is going to sound crazy, pretended to be racist, right? And it's because they've been around racist people their entire lives, that all their connections, their family, their friends, everybody they know to some degree is racist. And even though they don't support it, it's a struggle for them to completely separate themselves from people that have been intricately involved in their lives for their entire lives. So imagine at this moment being a Zionist. That cult hits a lot different, because it's not like racist people, they may or may not control, they may or may not have the keys to your life and your livelihood. But there's a 98% chance if you're a Zionist and you decide to reject that community, they do. That is a fucking fact. That is just reality. Zionism is so intricate. It controls so many aspects of our society, not just in the US, not just in the UK, not just in the Middle East. I mean, I see it here in Brazil at times, right? It's all over Argentina. It's in every single aspect of our society. So imagine you being the one Zionist in your family, or at least former Zionist, that's like, hey man, y'all don't think that it's wrong that we're killing a bunch of kids and saying that it's because they're on our land? Isn't our land our land? What does Gaza have to do with that? Imagine you being the one to say that. And all of a sudden, all your inheritance, every opportunity you thought you were going to get, even your own family, just goes away. Because when you're a Zionist, there's almost like this unwritten rule. You play ball, then you get to win. You get to be part of the team. You get to enjoy the benefits of looking away when genocide is happening, right? But if you don't play ball, hey, we could turn you into Joy-Ann Reid or Mehdi Hassan real quick, right?
Right.
I mean, and look at because we got to remember, as much as we don't like Mehdi Hassan, they didn't even give Mehdi Hassan a chance to do his show before they fired his ass. They said, "Oh, he Muslim. I don't want to know what he's gonna say. Let's just go ahead and take him off the show." Joy-Ann Reid gave the most tepid criticisms of genocide. Bye-bye. Candace Owens. Hey, man, I'm just never going to support killing children. Wow, that's a step too far. Candace, she crazy. Candace is crazy. I'm like, yo, y'all think that's the craziest thing Candace Owens has said? They tried to think about like what's like, you cannot like Candace Owens, but still recognize like what happened when she decided to step on Zionist toes, right? Because she's being punished, in my opinion, for two reasons. Or should they try to punish her? Because she had one job, and that was to criticize black people as a black woman and never step out of that box. So there was that. But then when she finally decided to step out of that box, it was to criticize the people who were writing her checks. And they were always writing her checks. Maybe she wasn't aware of that, because there are some people who weren't quite as aware of how much Zionism has consumed the media and really business and once again, every aspect of society prior to October 7th. But she found out. And they thought that they could crush her. Maybe because they've successfully done so many times before that they didn't think it would be a problem this time. So they thought they could successfully crush her just because she said, I don't want kids to die. They were okay with her saying Hitler was right. Or Hitler wasn't, what did she say? Hitler wasn't that bad, basically? Is more or less what she said. And they still brought her on. Think about that. They brought her back. They tried to recuperate her image after that. But saying that she doesn't want Gazan kids to die was a step too far. Like, that's so right. Imagine why you wouldn't. I can imagine why a lot of these IDF people are like, yeah, man, I have my criticisms of this war, but I'm not going to say anything because they're terrified of they can see it. We all can see it, but they're living it. Like they know how deep it really goes. So I feel like that's a huge reason why you don't see more Zionists actively speak out, because I talked to one. I literally talked to one who was he described himself as a Zionist. He's a professor at Duke, and he was like, I'm horrified by what I'm seeing come out of Israel. That is not the country that I was born in. At least I would not like it to be. I didn't think that was a mindset of the people that I grew up with, and he is horrified, but he doesn't say it often or out loud or on Twitter, because he knows that there's the backlash from that community is real, and they will come at you even harder if you are a Zionist or a Jew that speaks out against Israel than if you are anybody else.
And also, it's supremacy. Ultimately, it's supremacy that you're supporting. But speaking of the Christian part, this is another thing that I mentioned. I don't know if everybody knew about this, but at the same time, in the West Bank, Israeli settlers were attacking the Christian village of Taba and Ramallah, setting homes on fire and shooting the residents. So my thing is, are conservative Christians going to say anything about Israel attacking other Christians?
They still haven't.
Exactly. You see what I'm saying?
You heard my theory that Israel, like, people haven't realized yet, but I'm pretty sure I pieced it together. The U.S. is actually the greatest threat to the greater Israel project, right? So while the Israel still needs the U.S., that is actually a weakness, because as long as they need the U.S., that signifies that the U.S. is still the dominant superpower in the world, not Israel. And so while they're using the U.S., while they're paying off these politicians and keeping their pockets full of shekels, they are simultaneously trying to get the U.S. to engage in its own demise, which is part of the reason why they wanted the U.S. to get involved more in this situation versus Iran, because they knew that at the end of the day, they might not destroy each other, but it will be pretty damn close as far as Iran's actual, like, the cities in Iran and their economy, and then subsequently the economy in the U.S., right? And as that's happening, we all know that they would still be expanding. They're in the process of formalizing their relationship with Syria. They're bombing Lebanon. We know Lebanon's part of that project. We know Egypt is only loyal to the U.S. because of the money that they can give them. Once that money runs out, that loyalty will also run out. So by taking out the U.S. economically and having them do it by choice, right? Because the U.S. thinks that they think that they're making their own choices, and they think that Israel is going to protect them in that region. But what did Ted Cruz say? Whenever Tucker Carlson was like, hold up, Israel spies on the president? And Ted Cruz is like, yeah. And Tucker goes like, you cool with that? I mean, it's normal. No, it's not. It is not normal. What are you talking about? It'd be one thing if we were like co-allies, right? If we both relied on each other with some form of equity, bro, y'all can't exist without us. Imagine going to spy. I'm not spying on my mama. My mama will bust my ass. Who do you think you are, sir? Like, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I pay the bills in this house. I'm the reason you're alive. You can't live without me. Who do you think you are spying on me? But Ted Cruz is talking like it's normal. But Epstein, Why would they have a man gather intel on their allies like that? Like that type of blackmail? Out of all the forms of blackmail you could like, are you sure their intentions are what you think they are? Because the US manipulated every single ally, every Western ally, into basically perpetuating their own demise, propagating their own demise after World War II. And they thought that it was their choice, but it really wasn't. We saw the UK have to split up and give up all their colonies, all their vassal states after World War I and World War II. We saw all these countries voluntarily enter into these World Trade Organization, voluntarily enter into the United Nations, voluntarily enter into NATO. But in reality, all of them were just entering into organizations that the United States were controlling. And now, with the World Trade Organization, with NATO and NAFTA and other type of regulatory institutions, guess what? The goal was so that none of the allies could ever pass them again. And the U.S. knew that. And the other allies may not have known that, but they found out. So that's why China, not really ever being an ally of the U.S., was able to surpass the U.S. because they weren't participating in this game that the other allies were doing, trying to placate a post-World War II U.S. Israel looks like, to me, is taking a play out of their playbook. Like he's like, yeah, we're about to make y'all literally, we're going to lead you to your own demise. We're going to pay off a few politicians to look the other way while it's happening, and we're even going to get y'all to cheer for it. We're going to get y'all to cheer for your own demise. Because that's effectively what we saw happening with Iran, right? If we would have went to war with it, we're not winning that war. I keep telling people that. Nothing changed about my opinion. Still nothing has changed. They're already talking about Iraq could start enriching uranium again in a couple of months. That strike was not effective. No. That strike was not effective. So that's my theory, is that Israel is literally trying to destroy the United States because the United States technically would be the biggest threat to a greater Israel project.
Well, and now we're seeing, and this is another thing too, and I know many of us have talked about this. Again, I told people I'm still skeptical of him, and I'll be doing a panel Tuesday night about this race. But now we're seeing Zoran Mandami was able to win a primary while running on supporting BDS and running on a one-state solution. So Israel was really screwed.
Yeah. I mean, he was the only one that wasn't kissing Israel's ass. Now, granted, his little comments about wanting to increase that budget because Jewish people said they're feared for their lives. So, I'm just gonna say, my guy, like, because it's like a hate, anti hate crime initiative or whatever. I'm like, bro, you know how many people actually do fear for their lives because like they wake up every day and they don't get to choose to be Zionists. Like they don't get to announce to the world like, hey, I'm Zionist. Please be mad at me. Like, no, they're like Black people, Latinos, even East Asians. There are a lot of people who actually experience genuine racism and genuine fear of a hate crime. And like by funding that budget to the tune of what do you say, like $800 million or something like that, something crazy.
Yeah.
Like, you are legitimizing Zionism while simultaneously saying that you condemn Zionism and the genocide. Like you can't do both. And also by who you're choosing to ignore, the struggles you're choosing to ignore also lets us know a lot about you and where your priorities are. So he needs to be careful with that.
Yeah. That's what many of us were saying. Is like you're making it so that I think he's trying to appease both sides a little bit, and I don't think this is one of those issues you can both sides. I just don't. I just don't. That's like, I don't know. That's like trying to both sides like during the civil rights movement. Like you can't.
Exactly.
It just at this point in time, no.
You know what, Sabby? But it's not though, because during the civil rights movement, desegregation was actually unpopular. So like you're in a very unique situation where your side is the most popular side in the world. It is not even close. So much so that you can be the only one on stage who says you condemn the genocide, you will not support Zionism, or and you would demand accountability, and you would like to see accountability, and be Muslim and say all that and still win. And still win a primary.
And on top of that, I don't know if people were aware, but he won Hakeem Jeffrey's district. And Hakeem is a big Zionist, takes a lot of money from AIPAC. So that says something. Now, I don't know what's going to happen in the general, because the numbers are showing right now, if Andrew Cuomo was back in the race, by the way, running as an independent.
Did he make an official announcement? Because I know the other day he was contemplating not running.
I believe so. Eric Adams doesn't want him in, but the numbers are showing right now that if Andrew Cuomo leaves that race, then Zoran is well ahead of Eric Adams. If Andrew Cuomo stays in that race, Zoran has a stronger chance of losing, because you have. I'm serious. Andrew Cuomo has more support right now in the polls. More people support Andrew Cuomo than Eric Adams.
That makes sense. I would have just assumed that he was going to take votes away from Eric Adams. So, like, if he stayed in the race, I assumed it was going to help Zoran.
The numbers aren't looking like that now.
That's interesting.
Yeah, more people,
because he beat him. You know what I'm saying? Like, he beat him. So, like, why would he? Like, I guess they're assuming that Republicans are going to swing hard to Andrew Cuomo.
I think a big part of it is we got to remember not as many people vote in the primary as in the general. So more people are going to come out for the general election, but also then too, we also got, like, we remember how Bernie Sanders did in the primary, how he was doing in 2020. Remember how he won, like, what was it, New Hampshire? And then he went on and won Nevada, and everybody started freaking out and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you saw what eventually happened when things came around. So I just think, one of the mistakes, which I said before on the show, that Zoran is making, is that he's not connecting with older Black voters. They hands down went towards Andrew Cuomo, right? So that's a problem.
But like I said, you come out here, you want to talk about hate crimes, and the first people you point to is the most protected class in the world. Like, that's who you want to help. You're not even pretending like we're a priority. And I'm not even saying, like, if you want to say like everybody's a priority, okay, then leave it at that. And then, take it from there. I can't really blame you. But when you go out of the way to make them the priority, as if there's something unique to them that will make them a target, right? Like, that they can't help. Like, you don't have to go around announcing that you're a Zionist that believes in genocide. No one's telling you to do that. And even if you did, that would not justify you getting $800 million budget increase to protect you. If anything, I would feel like y'all have free reign as New Yorkers to handle y'all business. You know what I'm saying? Like, so
yeah, but that's the thing. Like I said before, I was like, I think you would get more Black voters if you had Black issues, right? Like, if you put Black issues at the forefront. I said the same thing when Bernie was running, right? But then people will say that's divisive, that's identity politics. But it's okay for other groups to do identity politics. You see what I'm saying? You see how other groups will come forward and say you need to put us first?
That's that shit. Listen, Sab's out here spitting facts. She's spitting the gospel, because I always say it's very interesting how every other demographic can have a coalition. And no, not can have a coalition. It is expected for them to have a coalition and advocate for their rights specifically. It is expected of them. They're like, how are you going to get anything passed politically if you don't have your own coalition? Okay, well, we're going to have our own coalition of Black people. We're going to center Black issues. Whoa, racist? What? You don't see white issues? Oh, actually, yeah, we kind of do, right? Like, we literally, there's, whether you want to, call them racist or whatever, like, there is a whole sect of the GOP and even some Democrats, some liberal Democrats, who want to maintain the status quo because it benefits them, right? So, yeah, there is. I mean, they don't want to call it that, but that's what it is. But Indigenous have their own coalitions in their states, especially for municipal elections and state elections, which is important, and I support. There are, hell, look at AIPAC. Do I even have to say more about Zionists? There are people who work in specific fields that have their own coalition. No one calls them divisive for wanting to better the economy for their benefit. But when Black people that have anything to say, right? It's, even though, once again, there are still Jim Crow policies affecting us to this day. There was another case of redlining found and prosecuted recently. I think the case ended up, they found him guilty in 2024. So it's still happening. And this is in places like New York. And so he actually has the power to speak out against, like, the quota system that everyone know the NYPD uses. He could speak out about redlining and not only speak out about it, but as the mayor, he has the ability to correct it.
That's right.
And that would change everything for New Yorkers. Because, I mean, whether it be Black Americans, Black Latinos also, like, they've been affected in some similar ways as Black people, like, but you don't even mention that type of stuff. And so if you're going to mention issues that would be discussed widely on a national level, then bring up those Black issues. Because it is in your city where Black people have been dominantly affected. Brooklyn will never look the same because of how they gentrified it. Williamsburg specifically will never look the same. I remember when taxes were terrified to drive through Williamsburg, and now it's one of the most expensive places in the world to live, right? The Bronx even is changing. Harlem will never look the same. Like, these are places that were dominated by Blacks and Latinos, and white people effectively kicked them out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not going to talk about that, then you can't come and ask for our vote, because we're the ones being affected by these policies. Especially if you'll call yourself a Democratic socialist or whatever, like, okay, then be that. But the problem, which we have discussed and other Black people have discussed, the problem with this Democratic socialism that y'all keep talking about, Black people seem to always keep getting left out. Every single time. It's just a weird coincidence. Even under the fucking leadership at the top, right? Like, it's kind of hard to pretend like we don't see it.
Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.